Welcome back to the Feature Focus Week in Planet Zoo for Planet Zoo 2. Yesterday we talked about new features, and today it's all about habitats. Yes, today we are going to dedicate this episode purely on habitats in Planet Zoo. Before we go into each individual feature you can see on screen, I want to quickly say that I love already the way how habitats function in Planet Zoo. I don't think there is a huge overhaul needed. However, there are really a lot of details that need to be improved, and just for your information, I want to go mostly with the same kind of system of, building the barriers and having the chance to have this episode, but there are a couple of things that we need to focus on, so let's begin with the first one. Number one is habitat overlaps. Now, you can see I kind of faked this over here. We do have a habitat, as you can see, outlined over here, and we've got a fence overlaid over here, because technically without any mod, you're not able to overlap habitats. And the reason why I would love to see habitats overlap is basically to kind of use the system of interspecies habitats in a bit of a better way. Currently, you don't have the chance to build a habitat in which you have different kind of holding areas, because the animals, as soon as they are brought into the habitat with the very one door, they will move around the habitat on their own. However, if you would be able to build a habitat that have two separate areas in which one animal have their dedicated enrichment items on the left and the other one on the right, and you've got a shared area with shared enrichment items in the center, that would then help to have basically overlapping structures also in the way how habitats work. But also it would help with free roaming animals quite a bit better. At the moment, how we do certain things, you can fake over kind of these things. I'm going to just quickly show you. This is a habitat over here, but what you could obviously do is you could get in and then just build a habitat all the way around this, using the invisible barrier. We could just build like a habitat all the way around this one. Somewhat like this. I'm just going to fake this real quick. So just like that, we basically frame the one habitat. So now technically this habitat over here is containing the one in the middle. However, if there is a keeper that couldn't go in here because of the fences, they only have the outside area available, and the one keeper that is dedicated to this habitat is not really understanding that they are within a habitat in here. I would love to see this system change to the way that keepers do understand when they are in the way of a habitat, and no matter if they walk through a door or not, because that way you could make like really nice free roaming animal habitats overlapping with other habitats easily, and make keepers work in the dedicated habitats when they are around, opposed to they have to go through a door to understand the system that they are in a habitat. But yeah, this is just like a little thing I would love to see. Most of the things you can already fake in the game by using these invisible barriers, but sometimes it just kind of becomes a little bit impossible to create certain habitat types because of the overlap, and I would love to see this fixed. Well, yeah, a direct kind of, result from this previous point of overlapping habitats is the need for multiple gates. And I think this is definitely a thing that people have been asking for since the very beginning. The game, and I think it is a deeper core programming thing, why we have not seen a change. So hopefully for the second game, this is going to be fixed. The way the game works, obviously, is the gate to the habitat and the habitat parameter. This is as soon as the keeper enters the game, enters the habitat, the game understands this to be the habitat. So this is where, obviously, we can also see that in the filters. If we go, for example, for the traversable area, we can say the staff traversable area, and you can see it is calculated for the dedicated habitat. And because you can see of this overlap over here, this kind of corner over here is spared out. If I were to move this, the habitat is calculated anew. And I guess this is how the game functions. If there was a second gate implemented, and let's say this gate is going to be here, this would obviously mean that the traversable area for the staff member who is entering this gate over here would only be that cutout corner over here. So if I were to just move this really quickly over, which is also part of the idea why I did this, you can see the traversable area should now change, yes, to that little thing. Imagine you've got that gate over here, this entire other thing would be the traversable area for the keeper. So the game has to calculate multiple traversable areas for a potential keeper, which obviously would mean more calculation happening in the game. And I I do think Frontier opted to only go for one gate to reduce the amount of calculations needed. However, this becomes super problematic if you have a habitat design that encounters, for example, a river in the middle. And if you want to use that river as a barrier between two species, for example, and you still want to make this one habitat, so let's say you want to keep a certain type of monkey on the one side, and then you've got some otters in that could technically go to the other side, this other side of the habitat would be a problem, because as soon as you build a bridge that is, working for a staff member, obviously a monkey could traverse that one too. So the only reason how in real life this is done is that the habitat has actually two separate entrances on both sides of the river, which allows the keeper to access both sides, so the otter side and the other side and the ape side, for example, which you could solve again with this overlapping mechanism, but way more important would be a gate mechanism. Speaking of multiple doors, that would also go for different type of fences, and this is already the next point we can transition over to. I would love to see a couple of different feeding fences and different type of gate designs in general. The reason why I think this is important is at the moment the way how feeding works in the game is a bit of a one-way road. You always have a typical kind of feeder, whether it's for food or drinks, and then the keeper always enters the habitat as they can, and no matter if it is a dangerous animal or not, they just simply walk in, throw the food there. However, how it is in real life, obviously you would have certainly more things like this, where keepers would push the food inside of some of the cages, because if animals are hungry, you potentially do not want to share the cage with them. The same goes for bigger animals that would require bigger gates in order to bring them, for example, to the veterinarian. You would need to have bigger gates for like elephants, giraffes, or even zebras or gnus or whatever. They are bigger than what this gate or this door would allow. So I would love to see bigger gates specifically for veterinarians, if that's the thing. They could actually be connected to this. Again, we are going to talk about this a bit more in the management episode, which I'm still so curious to bringing to you. It's so good. I've already recorded that previous to all the others because I needed to build the story until this one. It's going to be very good. But yeah, these are needed for what I have envisioned for how the game should function in a way, with all these little changes that would help certainly. But yeah, let's move on to the next point. Okay, so this one is a bit of a more meta level kind of thing. I wish to have different habitat zones that you can actually define, At the moment, a habitat is a habitat. You can click on it and you can name it. This is a habitat. Okay, so what I would love to see is somewhat similar to how you can create staff zones. Let's say you go for work zones and we create a new work zone. Now you can select obviously things like this, and then you create the zone, and the zone, if we were to select all these buildings with it, so this zone contains now these three type of buildings, and this would be the work zone 1 in our example. What I would love to see is that you can define different areas for your habitat. So for example, this building over here mimics now a zone, and we're going to rename this as the indoor section, and that one over here, these little things, as you can see, this, for example, would be our holding section. And I specifically took this wonderful blueprint from the workshop, which is a holding section for seals. I would love to see this actually as a gameplay feature, which I didn't do for new features because I thought it's a bit more connected to habitats. I would love to see this a little bit more done like in Jurassic World Evolution, where you have basically different types of operations that are all dedicated to habitat design. You've got gates, you've got different feeders, but you also have like hatcheries and stuff that are all connected to what a habitat contains. And I would love to see these type of holding sections as a replacement for the veterinarian in a way. I still would love to see a veterinarian or a medical center as a building, but I would love to see these things play into the role, because most certainly you would not carry most animals throughout the entire zoo for most of the needed medical operations or medical treatments. So you do have these kind of things where they collect a pee, for example, or urine or whatnot, but you also have these for just like typical checks, and you wouldn't do these checks in the big tank or in the big habitat. So holding areas would be really lovely, and to be honest, a way how the game could realize that would technically be the same way, and let me just drop this down just for showcase reasons, like this modular souvenir shop. So like if you place down, let's say this thing, this is then where the animal would do the animation on of whatever the treatment animation is. So basically the same as you have in the veterinarian house. This thing then would be invisible, and you'd plop this thing down in here. And then the animal would be in that thing, and the game would know, okay, the vet is going to be here, and it's going to, treat the animal on that little thing, and then you can design whatever you want around this and define this as the area. So if you define this part of the habitat, which again ties in with the overlaps, as the holding section, this is where the vet can go. It's kind of similar to where the mechanic goes in Planet Coaster to fix the rides, via the exit. So this is kind of it. The indoor section obviously comes into the management aspect. We're going to talk about that, because if you follow certain AZA requirements, which, by the way, spoiler, there's a habitat coming where I'm following the same idea that Leaf did. Shout out here to Leaf, a very cool concept I'm going to follow soon. But yeah, I just, when I played this, and I figured like, okay, the requirements in there are similar to the game, but there are a huge difference in a way as well. So we would need a bit of a change. So this is where these different habitat zones come into play. And then obviously the outside is another zone. So 3 different zones, holding, inside, outside. That's kind of how the zone I would envision. Next up in the list is the tank mode and the aviary mode, or tanks and aviaries, if you will. So as you can see, technically we already have this in the game, but we do have an issue. So if you build a tank over here, which is supposed to be for a full aquatic animal, you could not put in an actual gate in the game. Or actually you could, but what happens is, this is because of modding, and realistically with the water in, without a free build, you couldn't do this. Actually, I should be able to disable free build real quick. Let me just see, go to construction, take a piece, and then disable free build. I think now we shouldn't be able to put a door in. There you can see this. Now with the actual game, you would not be able to put a gate in, obviously, because there's water. As soon as the water would be out, you would be able to put a gate, but then it's not a tank anymore. So the way I envision this is a dynamic kind of gate that would be created, defined by the height of the water level. You kind of have the gate, you've got a ladder going down, or if you put a pathway in here, this is why this is also raised. So if you would raise the pathway, the ladder would be shorter, or there's no requirement for a ladder anyways. But this is how the gate then would work. If this needs to be like a full door, I don't know, I just choose for hiding the glass over here, but that would work obviously to enable us for full aquatic treatment. And then if the keeper goes here, maybe that platform needs to be bigger, you name it. But just as for the showcase reasons, that is what I would love to see. Now next up is obviously the aviary mode. I took one of the greatest aviaries that I think from the workshop, looks phenomenal, and yes, I would love to see fence types that allow us to do these type of things. I think there are some cool demos online on how these type of fencings could work. I've seen also a mod at some point where you could drag certain ropes. I can't find the video to it, otherwise I would have implemented that, but I just simply couldn't find it. If you can find it, please link it down below. I'm gonna allow the link for that one. But yeah, so it's really cool to have this aviary mode. So basically what this would be, if you go to barriers, we've got certain type of barriers, and if you, for example, go to use like the steel mesh over here, and you select that one, you have got certain settings already, and over here you can now say, for example, climbing proof. This is already changing the type more or less. I would love to see an option over here where you can say curve top is obviously already, I'm just going to show you if this is going to go for a curve top, and you raise that, you can then get a curvature in. I think too little people actually use that because they don't even know this exists, but you can create certain curvatures with the wonderful fences over here and create wonderful kind of weavy walls like that, which is kind of cool looking for certain areas if you wish to. But I would love to just have an option that says aviary mode, and in this moment it basically automatically creates kind of a roof of the same material of your used fence. And obviously for aviaries you would have like steel mesh kind of rope fence or whatnot, and then putting in certain middle supports like this could then create like these kind of top pointy structures. I would love to see this, because building these things manually is a freaking pain, and you would never get it so good as if there was a real kind of procedurally generated rope type of whatever. I would love to see this. I would make things so much more simple. But yeah, let's move on with the next 2 points. So the second last one is a bit of a hard one to showcase. It is a more meta level one. I would love to see a change on how the duplication, is that the real word, how the weathering duplication model of the barrier status. As you can see over here, the barrier is damaged, and you can see this if you zoom in, and I left this open for a while so we can see this. You know, they are semi-open. As you can see, the game just kind of shows that there is a problem, and it would make it easier for animals to break out, which is all fine. I get that. However, this is not really feasible for the way how people build habitats in this game. If you look, for example, of this type over here, this is where I would be using just invisible fences, and I wouldn't need to even care about this anymore, because the only part in the game that is having a duplication is the barrier itself, the barrier piece. But if you were not using this and you use actual in-game wall pieces, you never have a problem with maintenance. I hate that. I would love to see that around the area of where you decide the fence goes, there is a certain level of duplication, or however that word is, you know, that needs to be maintained. So your entire habitat has a maintenance status, no matter if you have a barrier or if you're using in-game pieces to create a barrier, because otherwise the maintenance overall doesn't make any sense. We got to talk about this more in detail in the management episode, but yeah, I just would love to see this one in the game. I think it's a huge chance to improve dramatically over Planet Zoo 1 system without too much of a change, actually. Anyways, let's go to the last one, and this one is exciting. The last one is food management or food production modules. I'm kind of happy to showcase a little greenhouse here made by the wonderful delay designer. I found this just by searching in the workshop. I didn't know she did this, but I love this one because it absolutely fills in the idea I have. It is a rather simple build which fills in the idea perfectly, because this is super modular as I would envision this. I would really envision getting in the game facility modules. Now, obviously at the moment, if we go for stuff modules, and we were to check all these things actually without the blueprints, we obviously have the keeper hut. You know, if we put down the keeper hut and we have a little peek inside of the keeper hut, which I'm gonna place on down here, this is this wonderful little kitchen where they can prepare the meals. But where the heck is the food coming from, you know? And I would love to see the option to produce your food yourself, and I would love to have very much simple things. And yes, again, it can work the exact same way as the souvenir shop works. Just again, for those of you who don't know how the souvenir shop works, we're just gonna type in the souvenir shop, which at the moment obviously is just that like little base over here that you plop down, and then these little souvenir items over here that you can plop down can then be connected to a module. As you can see over here, I'm just going to go into the module, and let me just take that one, double click on that one. Let me just connect all these things. Can I just not? Oh wait, actually they are filled in. We can just say what type of things are in here. And just imagine the same system. You have these kind of racks over here, and then, you know, it's basically not selecting animals that you imagine. There is a crop type in here that you can select to grow yourself. And obviously that would be initially more costs, or you can have some tomatoes grow. It would initially be more cost, but long term you would produce your own food, which lowers obviously down the cost for food purchase. I would love this system. Again, a little bit of an explanation here needed for the management episode as a bit of a, you know, a segue into what we're going to talk about in the management, because if I weren't doing this and if you weren't watching this video, the management episode would be 2 hours long, which we don't need. I want to keep it crisp and clear, and this is why we are ending this and go into a little conclusion of our wonderful habitat episode. Okay, friends, this has been the Habitat episode. Just as a little bit of a conclusion, we had certain things like multiple gates, overlap habitats, indoor sections, or basically definable sections like holding sections indoors and outdoors, the aviary mode and the tank mode, as well as obviously greenhouses for producing our crops ourselves. And we also had the duplication system that needs to be changed a little bit. I certainly, again, as I said at the introduction of this video, I still believe that this current system is super cool as it is already, but with all these more or less subtle changes. It looks like a lot, but it's not really that much of a change. I would think this would be really come to another level of habitat building, would give us a chance to make it more meaningful also for the Sandbox players, but then again also to create a bit more of a dynamic gameplay. You will see in the management episode, and please don't do a drinking game with that, because the amount of times I refer to the management episode is not healthy. So whenever we have this episode in 2 days time, you will understand why I did certain things the way they are. Let me know in the comments what you think of these changes, what would be the most important one for you of all of these, and is there something I forgot you would love to see in habitat changes as well. This is what I had in mind for it. So again, come join the discussion in the comments down below. I would love to see you there. And also make sure to sub to the channel if you haven't already, to be informed for the next episodes, because you cannot rely on the YouTube feed anymore. If you are regularly on YouTube, you know what I mean. The YouTube feed is not really working anymore. It's basically broken. So please do me a favor and sub to the channel and activate the bell if you haven't already. That helps me as a creator the most. Or if you just fancy helping more, you can use as well the super thanks or purchase a game via Instant Gaming. You do you, but I still want to just say thanks to all of you keeping up with me. This is going to be a fun year with Planet Zoo 2. I'm looking forward to that one so much, and hopefully we build something cool together. And now let's focus on the next episode, which is going to be the overhauls tomorrow. It's going to be very cool. We are going to talk a lot about overhauls derived from Planet Coaster 2 and Jurassic World Evolution 3, but also from Planet Zoo 1. So that one is going to be exciting. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow, and bye.